Και θα καλέσουμε στο βήμα τον επόμενο ομιλητή, ο οποίος είναι ο αγαπητός μας φίλος και φιλέλληνας Dan Flynn, ο οποίος μας τιμάει κάθε χρόνο με την παρουσία του, είναι επίτιμος διευθυντής του UC Davis Olive Center, του Κέντρου Ελιάς του Πανεπιστημίου της Καλιφόρνια, ο οποίος θα μας παρουσιάσει τα στοιχεία τα οποία περιλαμβάνονται στο νέο βιβλίο το οποίο έχει εκδώσει το Πανεπιστημίο της Καλιφόρνια, το οποίο ουσιαστικά είναι ένα manual το πώς θα φτιάξουμε ένα καλό ελαιόλαδο και θα ακούσουμε όλα τα βασικά σημεία. We're going to talk about the main factors affecting the production of a high-quality olive oil. So, Dan, welcome to Greece, and thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Prokopi. Yes, it's nice to be back here at the Olympia Awards, and you know, I think we can agree that producing a high-quality oil is a great thing, but even better is producing a lot of a high-quality olive oil, right? You want to produce a lot, hopefully maximizing every year whatever the capacity you have in your production to increase your profitability and to serve your clients. So that's going to be the topic of my presentation tonight, and it is based on this olive oil production manual that I believe I've mentioned in previous years, and I've sort of like faithfully thought that this was going to be coming out imminently even 4 years ago, and it finally came out last September. These things take a little longer than I expected, but this was the first one I was involved with. I actually worked on this as my last major project before I retired, and it is the best available information that we have in California to help growers increase their profitability. And it was authored by a number of different experts at the University of California, but we also wanted to bring in experts from the industry to make sure that in the areas that we didn't have a lot of research in, that we had the benefit of the industry's expertise to make sure that this was going to ring true for people out in the field. So I was a contributing editor and a co-author of 5 chapters of the book. And just to give you a quick overview, I mean, it really covers everything about olive production and olive oil production. It's California focused, but you know, a lot of the things about olive oil production can be applied anywhere where olive oils are produced, but there's clearly some local aspects on the growing side to be aware of, and varietal differences and so forth. But we have the California Industry and Standards, there's olive botany and physiology, all these topics going right through from the orchard site selection. It focuses a lot on modern production of olive oil. It is looking at, when I say modern production, higher density and machine harvested. So it could include this super high density, which is a photo here. This is where you have, I would say, somewhere in the range of about 1,500 trees per hectare, which is, you know, probably not even in existence here in Greece, but is becoming increasingly a part of the international production. In Spain, they lead the world in this type of production. Or it could also be high-density production of, say, let's say 600 trees per hectare. But going through the irrigation and fertigation systems, which is common in these types of modern orchards, irrigation management, the soil and nutrition management. We had a very good professor from UC Davis who's internationally known in nutrition for different types of crops, and we were lucky to get him to contribute a chapter for olives. Canopy management, pest and diseases, weed management, spray application techniques, harvesting, and the topic that I'm going to zero in on tonight, which is on processing. So most of this stuff is happening out in the field. This photo here is actually more of a high-density orchard using a prune harvester to harvest the olives in that high-density olive orchard. But we're going to talk about processing in the points I'm going to make tonight. And just also for your information, I don't profit from the sales of the book. I'm not talking about it because I'll profit from it, but it's something that the University of California publishes and is available, and typically these kinds of production manuals are sold internationally in different crops, and people in various countries find value in what California has been putting out. So I've got my picture of during COVID when I was working on this project. The picture of me without a mask is in your program. And in this chapter, I recruited a couple of very good olive oil processors. Pablo Canamasis, who is the former lead miller for the company Boundary Bend, which is Australia's largest producer. Pablo is from Argentina originally. He was trained in Spain, but he's produced olive oil all over the world. He's very much in demand as a consultant all over the world. And then David Garcia Aguirre, who is the master miller at the second largest producer in California, Corto Olive. And David, as well as Pablo, have not only been producing millions and millions of liters every season, but they've also worked at a very artisan level and have worked with artisan producers. So their input was essential in this chapter, and really most of the knowledge came from them. I was more the communicator in this chapter on processing. So let's get to some of the key takeaways that are available to the processor to help maximize quality, but at the same time maximize the quantity. And sometimes there's a balance point there, right? So first, when you're evaluating the olives, they get to the processing facility and you're looking at the olives. Some of the key takeaways here would be less than 1% leaves and twigs in the bins of olives, little or no damage from pest, disease, frost, or from the harvesters, whether they're hand-picked or machine-picked. Very little to no mummies. I don't know if you know, do you know this term mummies here in Greece? So those are the olives that are left over from the previous season. They're very dried out, wrinkled. It doesn't take a whole lot of those to have a negative impact on the oil. So you really want to minimize as much as possible the mummies that are in your bins. And then this is also kind of a quick way to tell how much time and how much quality might be lost between the orchard and the crusher, is that the bin temperature should be less than 10 degrees higher than the air temperature. So this photo, I don't know if this looks familiar, Spiros, to you. You can figure, but this is a picture I took some years ago in Corfu, where the trees grow so high that really the only practical way to harvest would be to let the olives drop into nets. And so in this picture, you can see almost every best practice has been violated. And there's so many leaves in this. There's olives that are rotten. They've been affected by olive fruit fly. This is sort of the worst case scenario. It's the antithesis of making good olive oil. And it shows the courage of people like Spiros at the governor and wherever you may be in Greece, where you dare to go against the conventional practices in the pursuit of quality. Okay, so the second point to make, and you all know this, is you want to minimize the delay between harvesting and processing, because storing fruit too long is the main cause of poor quality olive oil. So, you know, some good rules of thumb here would be that it's ideal to have less than 4 hours from harvest to crusher as quickly as possible. You know, if you can do it in 20 minutes, that's even better. And, you know, a lot of folks think that, well, 24 hours is okay, but it depends on what kind of conditions the olives are sitting in during those 24 hours. If you have a really cool evening when the olives are sitting out, if you have ventilated containers that they're sitting in, if they're not sitting in the sun, then it's okay. But these are factors that become more critical as time passes. Then you want to pay attention to fruit moisture in the olives. And what the data shows from my co-authors who've produced, again, millions and millions of liters every year, is that olives that are at between 50 and 56% moisture tend to maximize your oil yield. So this is a test that you can have done in a lab, but you want to try to control that. If you're irrigating, control your irrigation so you get into that sweet spot of between 50 and 56% moisture in the fruit. So, typically we would wash the fruit when it arrives at the mill, but washing can add moisture, obviously, to the fruit. And it may not be necessary, and this is something you may want to consider. If the fruit isn't dirty, maybe bypass the washer. There is a risk that you might get some gravel or some metal, maybe from if you got trellis systems or something, or some kind of metal byproduct that gets into your bins. That's a risk of not washing because the washer tends to collect those things. But it's something to think about if you want to increase your quality and possibly your yield with olive oil production. Another point is to calibrate the crusher. Now, I used to think that whatever crusher, and most people are using hammer mills, and I just thought whatever you poured into the crusher and got out at the end of the process was what the equipment was going to give you. But this is also a key critical factor that can increase your yield and your quality. The grid size and the rotation speed of that mill have a big impact. And I was looking at a literature review that was done a few years ago. We've done some research on this at UC Davis as well, but I think generally what the literature has found is that the faster the rotation speed, the higher the phenolic content is going to be in the oil. The thing you need to look out for, especially if you're working with high moisture fruit, say above 56% moisture level, is you can get an emulsion when you're running the crusher at such high speeds. And when you get an emulsion, then you're really reducing your yield. So, but it can have a big effect not only on phenolic content, but the complexity of the aroma, bitterness and pungency that go along with the phenolic content. General rule would be to use the smaller grid size for small fruit and the more unripe fruit, and the fruit that is less than 56% moisture. And on the other hand, you could use a larger grid size for high moisture fruit to try to prevent the emulsion from occurring. And then another factor that might be neglected by some, but it really has an impact on your yield, is if those hammers, and in this, you can see the 3 hammers here, the edges will start to get worn. And if you no longer have sharp edges, that's really going to have a detrimental impact on your yield. So it is very cost effective to replace those hammers, and as well as the grid. If the grid holes start to get a little corroded, then you want to replace the grid as well. Then we move to malaxation, and many volatile compounds related to the positive aromas are composed in the malaxer. You want to keep the temperature as low as possible. I think a lot of us know this. But you don't want to go below 22 degrees if you want to get adequate extraction. Some of you may feel that that is a worthy trade-off if you're looking to get super high quality, but just to give you a sort of a baseline, 22 degrees would be where you would want to have as a minimum. And you'd want to keep the time as short as possible, 45 to 90 minutes for adequate extraction, but again, you may choose to do less than that if you're seeking super high quality and you're willing to give up on extraction. And then we get to storage. I didn't go through every step because we don't have the time, but it's best to store your oil in bulk and in stainless steel. Plastic can really reduce the shelf life, and in California, a lot of producers were using these plastic totes because they were inexpensive, they were easy to move around with a forklift, but it really has a detrimental impact if you've taken all the care to produce high-quality olives, get it through all those steps of the process to produce the highest quality oil, and then you store it in something like this, you're just defeating all that hard work. Holding it at 15 to 18 degrees, your shelf life is reduced by 7% for every degree above 18 degrees. So that's what we're finding in the data that we get. And regularly injecting the tank with an inert gas. And your shelf life is going to be reduced by 25% without those regular flushes of inert gas. So to close here, this book is available, but it would cost a lot to ship single copies here to Greece. This volume weighs more than a kilo. And so in discussing with Eleni and Prokopius about what we could do to try to control the cost of the book for people who may be interested in it, would be to have people indicate their interest by pre-ordering it, and that way they could ship in bulk some copies here to Greece. And so if you're interested in getting it, and it's in English, of course, sometimes these manuals are translated to other languages, but that will take a long time, and maybe there wouldn't be the demand here in Greece to impose the expense of translation. But if you're interested, just let the folks know over at the registration desk that you'd like to get on the list. A copy of the manual is available in the back for you to flip through to see what it looks like. And what I've given you is just a small percentage of the really valuable information that you would get in this book. I think it will probably, when you count in the cost of shipping and everything, and with the World Olive Center not making any profit on this, it's probably going to be in the range of 100 euros for the book, maybe a little bit less. But when you count that against all the expense of producing a high-quality olive oil, and even if you can increase your average yield by 1 or 2%, but possibly a lot more than that, it's definitely an expense that'll pay for itself more than once. So again, we want to celebrate the high quality olive oil here tonight, but we'd also like to celebrate every year with all your tanks being as full as possible. Thank you very much.
Θα θέλαμε να ευχαριστήσουμε πάρα πολύ τον κύριο Dan Flynn. Είναι μεγάλη ευκαιρία το ότι αυτό το βιβλίο έχει μαζέψει όλες τις λεπτομέρειες για την παραγωγή πολύ καλού ελαιολάδου. Είναι κάτι που ενδιαφέρει όλους μας και είναι πολύ μεγάλη τιμή μας το ότι για όλους όσοι είναι μέλη του Κέντρου Ελιάς έχουμε τη δυνατότητα να φέρουμε αυτό το βιβλίο μαζικά σε όσους ενδιαφέρονται. Δεν υπάρχει κανένα κέρδος πίσω από αυτό φυσικά. Ξέρετε ότι κάθε τι που κάνουμε είναι μη κερδοσκοπικό. Είναι κάτι που όμως μπορεί να έρθει στα χέρια όλων μας και να πάρουμε αυτή την πληροφορία. Όσοι ενδιαφέρονται μπορούν έξω στη γραμματεία να δηλώσουν για περισσότερες πληροφορίες.